share, listen to Aloore Radio on Facebook. Aloore Radio, the voice of Oyo State. Gẹ́gẹ́ bí ìwòye àwọn òmòye tó ní òye bó ti yẹ kí ìlànà ètò ẹ̀kọ́ tó gbangba sùn lọ́yẹ́ orí gan lóde òní yàtọ̀ fáwọn ẹlẹ́bọ̀wọ̀wọ̀ tó lùgbòrò pa lórílẹ̀‐èdè yìí lọ́wọ́lọ́wọ́ báyìí ẹ̀sìn tó ń síwájú ọ̀hún rèé ilé ìwé Monarch Model College Challenge nìbàdàn àwọn ọ̀jọ̀gbọ́n onímọ̀ nípa ọ̀rọ̀ ìlànà ètò ẹ̀kọ́ nílẹ̀ yìí àti lókè òkun ló kórajọ pọ̀ síbẹ̀ àwòsífìlà làwọn èlò ìkẹ́kọ̀ọ́ ìgbàlódé tó sọnù síbẹ̀ àyíká ilé ìwé ọ̀hún rẹwà púpọ̀ ẹ̀rọ CCTV kámẹ́rà ń bẹ ní yàrá ìkàwé pẹ̀lú akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ péréte ní kíláàsì kọ̀ọ̀kan àwọn èlò eré ìdárayá tó kójú owó àwòmọ́ lè lọ lóríṣiríṣi àwọn akọ́ṣẹ́mọṣẹ́ olùkọ́ tó kójú òṣùwọ̀n ní kọ́mọ lọ́dọ̀ wa yàrá ìkọ́ ìmọ̀ ìjìnlẹ̀ sáyẹ́ǹsì tó sọ wọ́n nílẹ̀ yìí gbà ọmọ kan kọ̀ǹpútà kan ní bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ́kọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ tí ń káwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ wa láàárọ̀ lọ́sàn-án lójoojúmọ́ pẹ̀lú owó iléèwé tí ò gún pa rárá ayò nílé ìwé yìí jẹ́ fún gbogbo òbí àtàlágbàtọ́ ètò ìgbaniwọlé lọ lọ́wọ́ báyìí o sí ẹ̀ka ti JSS 1 to 3 àti ti SS 1 to 2 Monarch Model College wà ní plot 86 and 87 Polariwa Street Police Post Challenge Ìbàdàn 08169799661 website www.monarchmodelcollege.org Monarch Model College nìbàdàn ibùdó ìmọ̀ fáwọn afàṣẹwà lẹ́yìn ìwà ọ̀la.
Welcome to Monarch Model College, a community of kings and queens. We are located at plot 86 and 87 Polariwa Street at the back of Equa Church, Challenge area, Ibadan. You are welcome to our Teaching on Air episode for this week.
Okay, so today we are going to be looking at nouns and its functions. That is, what a noun is and what are the functions of noun. But before we move on to the functions of noun, we can remind us, brush up our memory on what a noun is. Okay? Yes? Okay, thank you. A noun is a naming word. Does anybody have anything to add to that? Yes?
A noun is the name of anything.
Okay, also the name of anything. Basically, nouns mean a naming word. And before, people usually say, oh, when they ask them what is a noun, they say it's the name of a person, animal, place, or a thing. But that is archaic, meaning it is past. Because it's not just the name of a person, animal, place, and a thing. A verb can take the place of a noun. An adjective can take the place of a noun. Why or how? Depending on how it is being put in the sentence. And that's why most of the time when we are talking, I don't say part of speech, you say word class. Because a particular part of speech can take another place of another part of speech. So to cut it short, a noun is a naming word. So now that takes us to the functions of noun. There are several functions of noun. Okay, we have here, the first one here is functioning as the subject of the verb. That is telling us who or what the sentence is being referred to. And when we say subject, what does that mean? When we say a noun is functioning as the subject of the verb, what does that mean? Or how do we know, oh, this noun in this sentence is the subject? Yes, anyone? Yes? Okay, it is the doer of the action, but there's something that I'm looking for. How do you know that this is the subject? If we have, okay, let's take the first example we have here. Richard kicks the ball over the backyard fence. And here, I underline Richard. How do we know that the Richard here is the subject of the verb? Or even if I didn't underline Richard and I ask, what is the subject of the verb in this sentence? Yes? Thank you, that's what I'm looking for. It is before the verb in the sentence. And the verb here is kicked. It means that for us to have a subject, there must be a verb. And the verb is always after the subject in the sentence. You can't have a verb before a subject. The subject has to come before the verb. And we have other examples here. The car rammed the shop window with great force. The car here is the subject of the verb. Why? Because it is before the verb rammed. And then we have another one. The thief robbed the jewelry store in the shadow of darkness. The thief is also the subject of the verb. Why? Because the thief is before the verb. And we should also note that the subject is always a noun. When you are looking for the subject in a sentence, it has to be a noun. Either a living thing or a non-living thing. If it's a noun, it can also be a pronoun, but if it is a pronoun, it wouldn't have a determiner. And determiners are either articles or adjectives, whichever one. An example, I have, he kicked the ball. Okay. His house is on fire. The first one here, he kicks the ball. This one, he, is also functioning as the subject of the verb. But as you can see here, it is no longer a noun. It is now a pronoun. And the second one here, his house is on fire. This is a determiner. A determiner basically is a word part that comes before the noun in the sentence. So this one here now is the determiner to the house, which is the noun has. And here it is an adjective telling us about the house. Okay? Then the second one is the noun functioning as the direct object. And when we're talking about objects, there are two types of objects that a noun functions as. What and what? Thank you. We have the direct object and the indirect object. Let's start with the direct object. Okay, here it says the direct object in an English sentence answers what after the action of the verb in the sentence. Basically, the direct object tells us what the action is referring to in the sentence. And when there is only one object in the sentence, that object is the direct object. Okay, I'll take it again. I said, basically, when there is only one object, an object is mostly a thing, or it could be a person. But when there is only one object in a sentence, that object is a person. Okay, sorry, that object is the direct object. Okay, here we have Jonathan renovated the house at the end of the street. Jonathan bought the book. She bought her sister a dress. Remember, it answers the question, what is the subject referring to? What is the subject referring to? And the direct object is always a non-living thing, that is something that is not a human. Here we can also have, here we can have the lady went home. She stole oranges. We have oranges and home as the direct object. That is, what did the lady do? She went home. What did the girl steal? The girl stole oranges. So once there is only one object in a sentence, that object is referred to as the direct object. Okay? Then the third one is functioning as an indirect object. We've already talked about what the direct object is. Now the other one is the indirect object. And it says here, the indirect object tells us to whom or from whom the action is done in the sentence. Basically, the direct object tells us what. The indirect object tells us whom. So from this two, we can tell that the direct object is referring to a non-human, whereas the indirect object is referring to a human. But for us to have a direct object, there has to be two objects in a sentence. Are we clear? For us to have an indirect object, there has to be two objects in a sentence. Okay? Again here, the student, David taught the students public speaking in their class. Emma bought Jonathan the screwdriver. From this sentence here, the indirect object is the first object immediately after the verb. The first object immediately after the verb. And we can see that from the three examples given here, the indirect objects are all humans or a living person. David taught the students public admin. Who did the public admin? The students. Emma bought Jonathan the screwdriver. Who did Emma buy the screwdriver for? He bought it for Jonathan. So we can see that the indirect object always refers to a person, whereas the direct object refers to not a non-human being or someone or something that is not living. Then also we should also note that the next one after the indirect object is the direct object. It means that if you're having two objects, she gave Ben a ball. She gave Ben a ball. And I said that when you're having two objects in a sentence, one is the indirect object, the other is the direct object. The indirect tells us whom the action is being referred to, whereas the direct tells us what the action is referring to. So from this sentence here, Ben is the indirect object, whereas the ball is the direct object. And when you ask the question, who or whom did she give the ball to? She gave it to Ben. And what did she give Ben? She gave Ben the ball. So we should note that there are two objects in a sentence, if there are. The first one is the indirect, the second is the direct. But if there is only one object, that is just one object, the object can be anything. It can be a person, it can be an animal, it can be a non-living thing. But as long as there is only one object, that object is the direct object. But if there are two, the first one immediately after the verb, just like David taught the students, students is the first one immediately after the verb. It is the indirect. Then the next one after it, that is any other type of noun it can be, becomes the direct object. Okay? Then the fourth one is noun in apposition. So we say here, noun can function in apposition to another noun when it appears next to another noun in order to explain or rename the noun. That is when we say apposition. Apposition means when two things that are alike are placed side by side to each other. You can say, oh, she's in apposition to this or he's in apposition to that. But basically, when we are referring to noun in apposition, it means when two nouns that are referring to the same person are placed side by side before the verb in the sentence. So for us to have a noun in apposition, there must be two verbs, there must be two nouns. But the two nouns will have to come before the verb. We'll have the first one, then the second one, then the verb and other parts of the sentence. But what makes one the apposition is that there has to be a comma between the first noun and the second noun. Let's look at this example. Johnson, the preacher, has been charged with arson. Now we are having noun in apposition here. Remember, two nouns placed side by side before the verb. We are having Johnson and the preacher. And if you switch it, the preacher, Johnson, has been charged with arson or whatever it is that the person has done. So it means that for us to have a noun in apposition, the two nouns has to refer to the same person. You can also say, oh, my school, Monarch Model College, is behind. You can see that when we start with my school, okay, when we have my school, Monarch Model College is behind blah, blah. Okay? Now we are having my school and Monarch Model College. And after that, we are having the verb is. But the noun in apposition is the Monarch Model College. We can't pick my school or Jonathan as the noun in apposition. Why? Because there has to be a subject. And what is the subject? Jonathan. In sentence 2, the book 1984. What is the subject? The book. Same as the third sentence. But for the apposition has to be the word immediately after the subject. And there has to be a comma to differentiate between the subject and the apposition before you have the other part of the speech, the verbs and the objects and the rest. So here, Jonathan the preacher has been charged with arson. So the noun in apposition is the preacher. The second sentence, the book 1984 is one of my favorite books of all time. 1984 is the noun in apposition. Same as the third sentence. You can even have the teacher, Miss Ifoma, is a female. Miss Ifoma and the teacher are referring to the same person. Even when you switch this, you can say, Monarch Model College, my school, is behind. You can see that both of them are referring to the same person. Okay? Let's go to the fifth one. The fifth one is noun as a subject complement. When we say complement, when we say, oh, what he's wearing, or if I should say his trousers complement his top, what does that mean? When I say what he's wearing or his top complements his trousers, what does that mean? The word complement. Okay, someone said match. Yes, any other person? Talking about something, yes? Join together, okay? All of that can be used. That is when you're saying complement. It means the both of them match. It means the both of them can be put together. It means that this one and this one are alike. And that is what the subject complement refers to. Okay, let's look at the definition here. A noun that follows a linking verb in an English sentence functions as a subject complement. A subject complement will always rename the subject of the sentence. It tells us more about the subject. So basically, it means that the subject complement and the subject are the same thing. But how you know that there is a subject complement is that we don't use lexical verbs. Rather, we use the helping verb, that is, verbs that do not show action, like is, was, were, and so on and so forth. You see that when you say, she is a king, she is a king. The is here is not showing any action, but rather it is connecting the subject with the complement. It is connecting the subject with the complement, telling us that the subject and the complement are the same person. And the thing is, it is similar with the noun in apposition, which we just did. But the difference is that for the apposition, they have to be placed side by side before the verb. Monarch Model, my school Monarch Model College is behind this place. Apposition will be placed side by side. But when we are now talking about complement, it means that the complement has to come after a verb. But that verb has to be a linking verb. That is, verbs that do not show action. The verbs would be is, was, were, and the rest of them. She is a king. It means that the king here is the subject complement, telling us more about the subject, she. Okay, let's look at some of these examples. David is the lecturer at the local college. The lecturer here is the subject complement, telling us more about the subject, David. Brad was the coach of the school football team. The coach also, subject complement to the subject, Brad. Then we also have Johnston is the brain behind a growing organization. The brain acting as a subject complement to the subject, and they were sailors 2 years ago. Sailors and they are the same person, but it is complemented both of them. Okay? Then the next one is object of the preposition. Object of the preposition. And it says here, when a noun functions as object of the preposition, it comes just after a preposition. Any noun that comes after a preposition is said to function as an object of the preposition. It is always in form of a prepositional phrase. That is, for us to have an object of a preposition, there must be a preposition, and it has to start with the preposition, and it has to start with the preposition. And then after the preposition, that's where we now have our nouns. The first sentence. The bus starts at the light. I underline the light. Now, what is the function of the light? We are going to say it functions as object of the preposition at. I have the boys play football in the backyard. And we have the backyard underlined and you're being asked, okay, what is the function of that noun there? But because a preposition comes before it, it's going to function as that is referring to the subject. But now when we are not talking about object complement, it means that that complement has to complement the object, no longer the subject. It means there has to be two objects, but one has to be the direct object, and then the other one now has to complement the object. And I give an example here. Rachel named a dog Raph. A dog there will have to is the object. Then we have Raph as the object complement, telling us more about a dog. Then Americans elected Trump president in 2016. President. Object complement to the object there, Trump. So whenever we are having two objects in a sentence, and one of that objects is referring back to the other one, the second one will be the object complement, and then the first object will be the object, will be the direct object.
Thanks so much for joining us for this week. Have a pleasant week ahead. See you next time.
Oh yes, your long-awaited Citadel of True Education for the rare gems. Monarch Model College Challenge Ibadan. Intelligence with good character makes up the real goal of true education. Parent and guidance. Connect your child to the arena of kings and queens, where quality and sound education is undoubtedly available. It's a government-approved school that stands tall among others with the best and globally acceptable standard of teaching. Beautiful and hygienic learning environment. Professional subject teachers. Well-ventilated classrooms with small class size. Ultra-modern science laboratory, standard music lab, standard computer laboratory, maximum security with CCTV surveillance. School buses are also available, all with affordable school fees. Admission is ongoing into GSS 123 and XS 122 classes. Application forms are available at Monarch Model College, plot 8687 Polariwa Street, behind Echoa Church, Police Post, Challenge Ibadan. 0069799661. Website www.monarchmodelcollege.org. Monarch Model College, a community of kings and queens.
Share, listen to Aloore Radio on Facebook. Aloore Radio, the voice of Oyo State.